So, first things first, we are going to spend most of today doing review, since it's been a month since we've all been together. And so, the last time that we were together, we were kind of wrapping up how to read a chart. I do want to start focusing a little bit on reading transits, but we will save that maybe for next week, since we have already started on, uh, or we at least left off on asteroids. But I want to start doing review. I want to do review before we jump into asteroids, only because I feel like it can just be easily forgotten in a month. um, and I think it might just be needed if we do a bit of review. So we'll quickly kind of go over some things. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. While I'm getting everything pulled up, how's everybody's like eclipse season been so far? Any interesting stories to tell?
Seems like there was a lot of energy around.
Hmm. Absolutely. Because what we had the eclipse in Libra. Have we had yeah, we had the eclipse in Taurus already? Yes, we did. I was like, when was that? We had the eclipse in Libra and we had the eclipse in Taurus already. So um we had two eclipses that were Venus ruled. One of them I will say I think was a bit better than the other, because I think when we had the eclipse in Libra, if I'm not mistaken, Venus might have, no, no, no. Both of them, Venus was in Virgo still, where Virgo is, or Venus is in its fall in Virgo. Um, so cross that off. Never mind. I'm like, hey, Benny, come sit, please. Um, yes. Oh, sorry. I'm like, I can't talk and pull things up at the same at the same time. Uh, mm, okay. So we spent, I think, like 2 months on aspects. And so I'm just going to kind of review on that. And if you guys do have any questions, let me know. And I'll pull up some examples that we can run through as well. So let me share my screen here. Okay. And then if you guys, yeah, have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. Yes, Saturn goes direct. I think it either goes direct today or it went direct today. I do not know the time that it went direct, but we can see if it's already direct. Give me 1 second there. Saturn is already direct. Um, and so it's going direct in Pisces. I just think that Saturn being in Pisces lately has turned out really interesting. But sorry, I was having two thoughts at once. Um, yeah, no, I think the thing with Saturn in Pisces is kind of like, because Pisces is things that go unseen. Um, and so Alicia was saying how Saturn going direct can also be about like karma coming back. And I do agree with that. Um, because Pisces can be a lot about things that go unseen or the things that are hidden. Um, oh, when it was retrograde, got it. Um, we'll talk about that a little bit too. But either way, Pisces is about the unseen things, but Saturn is about integrity as well as limitation. And so when Saturn is in Pisces, whether it's retrograde or not, it can really be more so about um, bringing things to light or things being put back in check, whether that be people or restructuring things or kind of uh, tearing things down so that they can be rebuilt properly, I think is definitely a Saturn and Pisces thing for sure. It just is, I think, a little bit. Um, okay. I think when we're talking about um, Saturn in particular in Pisces, it can, when it's direct at least, I think we see a bit more of a full view of Saturn um, and all of its kind of mess that it brings. So when it's retrograde, I say that it means it can mean integrity or bringing integrity to things. Um, when it's retrograde because I'm like, when it's retrograde, Saturn lays off a little bit. The things that it usually stands for, it gets a bit easier. Um, and it's not as constricting. When Saturn is direct, all of those things kind of come up full force all over again, especially when it's just stationing direct. Um, and so Saturn isn't just about structure, it can be about um, like feigned appearances. So it can be about people that manipulate, especially in Pisces. It can be about people making shady business deals. It can be about um, people in power also because Pisces is ruled by Neptune, so it's automatically about like sickness or like what is a cure for a certain illness or something like that, and maybe how certain things come to light about maybe medicines that we are getting or that are being put out to the public. That can also come up as well. I think that'll actually start coming up a little bit more in the next couple months here. We'll start seeing quite a bit about medicines or pharmaceuticals since Saturn has now gone direct in Pisces at 0 degrees in particular. Okay, so we were on aspects. I think we have a question. Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, so we had our aspects. So we had the five main aspects, and we did mention in conjuncts, but that one's not on here, so we'll like review it after we talk about the main one. So we have a conjunction, which can also be talked about as being named a co-presence. It just means that two planets are either in the same sign or they are like right smack dab next to each other. They don't have to be at 0 degrees. Like they don't have to be like at the same degree. Um, you can have a conjunction either when two or more planets are in the same sign, or you can have a conjunction by degree. So if you have like Mercury in Capricorn at 29 degrees and Mars at Aquarius at 1 degree, that is still a conjunction because they are so close together, even though they're not in the same sign. You can still have that conjunction. It just means that they're right next to each other. Think about them as like holding hands almost, or being in the same building and on the same floor, like, or I guess maybe even like in the same waiting room. If you like, because to me that makes even more sense. If you're in the same waiting room, you don't have to be sitting next to each other, but you're in the same space. Um, so that's a conjunction, and you're just melting what the two planets mean together in that sign, or if it's in two different signs, you are you're interpreting each one separately, but finding what they have in common. and you're bringing those two together. Um, for sextiles are going to be an aspect that you can do it by the 60-degree mathematical way, or you can do it the way that I always remember it. It's like the best friends of the zodiac. They're very different. They're in two very different signs that are going to be in elements that are compatible. So, like earth and water, um, are going to be a sextile, but it's going to be the signs within those elements that are not opposing each other. So, like Pisces and Virgo would be an opposition. So, you would not have those as being a sextile, it would be an opposition. But let's say like Virgo and Cancer is a sextile. Sextiles are going to have the energy of Venus. So they're harmonious. It's a partnership. They want to come together, create something new. It's very creative. It can there can be a big focal point on valuing what the other brings to the table, since Venus is also about values. But all around, it just works out very well. Sextiles uh, are a harmonious aspect. Um, a square is the next aspect, and it's our first hard aspect that we have. Squares are 90 degrees, 90-degree angles if you want to go the mathematical way. If not, you can always remember it like this. They are going to be in elements that are not compatible with each other, like fire and earth um, are not compatible with each other, or like fire and water, not compatible with each other. So like Pisces and Sagittarius is a square. However, um, with that being said, within those incompatible elements, you need to still have the same mode between the two signs. So, like I said, Pisces and Sagittarius are fire and a water sign. And so they're incompatible elements. However, they also have the same mode, which they are both mutable. So Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. Pisces is a mutable water sign. Um, all squares are going to be like that. They're just in elements that aren't compatible with each other, but what they have in common is the mode um, or the modality that they're in. And so squares have the energy of Mars, so there's a lot of friction, there's a lot of difficulty. Um, there's just a lot of tension and just fighting or aggression that's happening there. Um, with squares, it is not always um, it's a hard aspect. Honestly, I feel like there are worse aspects, like the T square, where you're working with the square and an opposition at the same time. But with squares, just like opposition, just like a T square, you are looking to change something. There is some sort of need to push through to change something to be able to alleviate the tension. Something has to give. Trines are going to be a harmonious aspect. They are basically when you have two or more signs that are in the same element. So like Cancer and Pisces are going to be a trine. Gemini and Libra, trine. They're both air signs. Aries and Sagittarius, both fire signs. It's a trine. So it's just working with signs that are in the same element. If you have a group of planets that are in all three signs of that element, we would call that a grand trine. Trines are going to be the energy of Jupiter, and so they're expansive, which makes a lot of sense. So if you have like a cup of water, if we're talking about water signs being a trine, it's like adding more water into that cup of water. It's more expansive. You're just expanding on the amount of water that is happening there. And so you're expanding on also, like, let's keep rolling with that example. So if someone had a water trine in their chart, then the water like elements of their chart would be being expanded on by that trine. So, like really big emotions, intuition, um, maybe also being a kind of vessel or just being very sensitive to energy is going to be something that trine is really emphasizing in that chart. Um, Oppositions are going to be signs are in that are indeed incompatible elements. So they are incompatible. They're not, I'm not saying it as incompatible, they are compatible elements between the two. However, um, they are sitting right across from each other. So it's kind of like two people having a conversation, um, or we can even say like a debate. Usually there is some sort of common ground there. Oppositions are going to be the energy of Saturn. So there's some restriction, there's some difficulty there. It's not as fiery as Mars. It's just kind of like they're just butting heads. You have to find a middle ground with oppositions to alleviate the tension. Usually with signs that are opposite of each other, there is some sort of similarity there. They're just doing the things that they're doing in two very different ways. So like Aquarius and Leo. Leo can be very much about what makes me special, and it's appreciated by other people. Aquarius is going to be, or I guess like let's rephrase that. So Leo is going to be like, um, this is important to me. This is what makes me happy. Um, this is what I create, and therefore give to other people, where Aquarius is going to be more so group focused. And it's saying this is what I do for the group to give to the individual. And so it's two sides of the same coin. They're just operating for the main goal in two very different ways. What they have in common is that they're trying to create something that is maybe better, where I think Leo does it more as far as like self-expression. Aquarius is going to be more about we can't have the individual without the group. So the group almost becomes more important. Um, but both are trying to push something forward. There's some sort of emphasis on um, responsibility almost. Uh, we talked about this a little bit when we were talking about the signs. Um, you can see it in lots of different other ways, how planets, or sorry, not planets, but signs that are opposite each other have a bit in common. Um, Continuing to roll with the actual example that I just came up with, Aquarius can be like, this is what makes me unique. And I really thrive in being like the black sheep of the group. But it's still about what makes me unique, what makes me special. Aquarius might just not be super creative, like as far as like, just pushing it in people's faces, like this is what I am, this is how I'm unique. But at the same time, they are, because when you become that outlier, I'm like, in a way, you're subtly making it very much known that you are different, that this is what makes you special. Where Leo is like, this is what makes me special. And I purposely put it out there because this makes me special. And so you see the similarity there. You can look at it in lots of different other ways as well. But um, so that's the opposition, the inconjunct. There are lots of minor aspects that you can find. Like there's a semi-quadrate, and then there's like semi-conjunct or whatever. I don't really work with those because to me, they all are just kind of like a more minor version of the major aspects. But if you want to work with the more minor aspects, you totally can. It just really depends on your own style that you decide to kind of come up with, or like what you think works best when you're interpreting charts. That is completely up to you. Um, but an inconjunct is going to be between two signs that literally do not see each other. So, like, this would be Gemini and Scorpio. They're not in opposition, they're a little bit off from each other. So, if you're thinking of an inconjunct, what you want to do is, or at least what I do, you don't have to think about it this way, But at least what I do is if I'm looking for what's an inconjunct, then I look at what would be the opposition of that sign, and then I go one sign over. So, like for Taurus, the opposite of it would be Scorpio. And if I'm looking for the inconjunct to Taurus, then I go one up or one down from Scorpio, which would either be Libra or Sagittarius, would be the inconjunct of Taurus. And you can do that with either one. But inconjuncts, they just don't see each other. They're literally not in each other's line of sight when you're looking at actual like the circle of how the signs go in the wheel. There we go. That's what I was looking for. The word I was looking for. Um, and so they always kind of miss each other. These will usually be the like I guess if we're talking about like in people, these will be the people that might not technically get along because like if you have like a Virgo and a Gemini, let's say, that are friends. That I'm like, that can easily be a friendship. But it's like with an inconjunct, these are people that just do not get each other. They're just kind of like, mm, they don't have a lot in common. Now, I will say also remember that everybody has their own chart. But if you have too many inconjuncts between two people's charts, they probably will just not understand each other or just won't want to understand each other because they literally cannot see where the other person is coming from. In like more of a worldview, this is going to be a time where things probably feel a bit chaotic, where nobody knows what's going on, um, where there's just maybe a lot of misinformation or a lot of hiding information, or a lot of distraction, because sometimes I also describe inconjuncts as if you have two speakers playing two different things and you're trying to hear one over the other, but each one is trying to drown the other one out. And so they keep bumping up their volume at different times. That's also a good, I think, visual or like kind of, yeah, kind of visual for what an inconjunct energy kind of is. Um, any questions on those? I'm going to pull up some charts where we can look at some of these aspects and we can interpret some of them for review. But any questions while I do that?
I just have a question. If we go, are we going to go over the homework you assigned last time or time before last?
Oh my gosh, did I? I'm like, I couldn't even remember the homework what was the homework that I gave? I'm
Okay,
sorry, it's been a month. So I was like, what was the homework that I gave?
you're
Oh,
good. Okay, last month you gave us a homework of chart reading practice,
mm, okay, yes.
which that one you actually had given two classes ago. So the
Hmm.
first aspects class you actually gave us where we had to read a chart and read what some of the aspects were. We could use a celebrity chart, a friend's chart, whatever.
That's right. It has not been a whole month. It's been 2 months since we've met last. Wow. Okay. Okay. So, would you like to share what you interpreted? I can pull up the chart if you give me the information.
Sure. Um, let's see. Are you ready?
Mhm.
Okay. April 9th, 1998.
April 9th, 19. You said 1980,
Oh, sorry. 1998.
1998. Okay, got it. Got it. 98.
Uh,
Okay. And then time?
7:30 p.m.
7:30. Oops, not 7:30 a.m., 7:30 p.m. Okay. And then the place?
Toronto, Ontario.
Toronto, Ontario. Okay. I'm going to use whole sign. Calculate the chart. And then let me share the screen. I'll just share my whole screen. Okay. So let me bring this up more. Okay. Let's see. Okay, can everybody see this well? Or do I need to zoom in more?
I need to zoom in a little more, if
Okay.
possible.
Okay. Let's see. I know there's a way. I forget every time how exactly to zoom in on this actual this one.
Should be able to click on the three dots underneath the minimize, and it will give you a
Oh,
or
is it
edit.
maybe under settings?
Maybe.
Maybe. We'll find out together. No, that nope, nope. Okay. Uh oops. Uh
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, no, reading charts is a whole language in itself. So if it is difficult, do not feel bad. Um, you're amongst friends. Because I mean, literally look at like if you look at a chart by itself, you have um you have this huge wheel with a whole bunch of lines going between a lot of different things, and all the lines are different colors. And so it's yeah, I'm like it's definitely something that's really tedious, and it's definitely not an easy thing to do because there's a lot of interpretation. It's not just like the technical part of it, but it's also the, I guess, more creative artistic side of it as well that you're putting into interpretation. So it's definitely not light work for sure. um okay, what I'm going to do is we're going to go back because I feel like I swear, when I actually remember how to do this, we are like cooking with gasoline. And I just have to remember how to do it. But until then, I'm going to continue to try and figure that out. Um, oh, no, actually, I know what I can do. I can just make this a snippet. When we do a little snipping tool. Ah, okay, I don't know if it actually did anything, but we'll see. Mm. Okay. Until I can figure this out, I'll just let you guys know where everything is at. So the chart that we brought up um, is a Libra rising. No, wait, yep, it's a Libra rising with Moon in Virgo, Sun in Aries. They actually have quite a few planets in Aries. Okay, so what did you interpret for this chart, if you would like to share?
Okay. I did one of each of the main ones. Well, I guess the three main ones.
Yeah.
Square, sextile, and what's the other thing? Trine.
Uh, yes, in
Trine.
opposition, if there are any. Are there any oppositions?
I did not see any, or at
Uh,
least
I don't
only
see any
in
either.
Lilith or Node, and we didn't go over those yet. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see any oppositions. I see the other ones though. So yes, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
okay. Okay. So I did the Pluto in the third house in Sagittarius
Hmm.
to Venus in the sixth in Pisces.
Hmm.
The native tends to seem wishy-washy and wistful. especially in the workplace, changing their
Hmm.
routine a lot. By doing that, it's hard for them to communicate their needs properly. And because they're fluttering from different things, people who work with them in any capacity try to steer their work because the native seems to be daydreaming, when in actuality, they're trying to think of how to do things better.
I like that. Um, why? It's correct, I think.
Mm,
I just want
Okay,
to hear why.
okay. I actually made like a little snippet of each thing and then put it together. So
Okay.
each thing is I think this is the Pluto part. The native prefers to express themselves through action and their hobbies, while their thoughts often verge on extremes. Their multitude of hobbies tend to keep them grounded and protected over exerting themselves with what ifs.
Mhm.
And then the Venus part. They love to live in their own head, and their daily routines are crucial to letting themselves dream of the pleasures in life whenever they can, sometimes even when they shouldn't.
Mhm. I like that. I like it a lot. Um, so with that square, because I'm like, what I'm like grabbing onto a lot with like the first thing that I look at when I see that square is like what you were saying about like it might come off like in the workplace as if they're daydreaming, or they might be misunderstood in the workplace. Um, I forgot exactly what you said, so I apologize if I like mess up some of the words, but
You're
they're
good.
actually trying to like figure out like maybe all the ways something can be done. I like that because I'm like, that is so Sagittarius, right? Because Sagittarius is more thinking about like the bigger worldview, and so is Pisces because they're both ruled by Jupiter, which, by the way, Jupiter is also in Pisces. And so there is like this mutual like tie between the square. And so it's they are trying to do both planetary placements are trying to do Jupiter things. They're trying to work together. However, um, I totally agree with you about the about even about both things. But Venus and Pisces is like I'm trying to figure out the most creative way to get things done at work. But I also really want to learn, and that's what I'm really getting by the like with the Pluto um in Sagittarius in the third is like I'm trying to learn, but I also really want to teach what I know. And I go off on these tangents. And maybe some people might misunderstand that. And so I really like that interpretation. Sorry, go ahead. I'm gonna look at some of these questions.
Thank you. You're good. Uh, so continue on.
Yes, you can continue.
Okay. With the sextile, the Neptune in the fifth house in Aries
Hmm.
to Mars in the seventh. Oh wait, sorry. Neptune in the fifth in Aquarius to Mars in the seventh in Aries.
Mars and seven. Okay, yes.
The combination is, well, the native may have a hard time with partnerships. They are aided when they are dealing with or doing things they both find enjoyable. Tensions are eased, and the native feels much more approachable when in their element, talking about or doing what they enjoy.
Yes. Um, I have comments. Hold on, but I think
Okay.
I'm like I also want to locate where the picture because I think that's the only way I'm going to be able to zoom in on this is if I get that snippet tool to bring up the picture I did the snip on. That
Mhm.
was like the oddest like sentence I've ever said today. That would be under my computer. Or no, it would be under pictures. Duh. No, no, not under pictures, not under photos, because it would be. Mm, Okay, sorry, keep going. I'm listening, but I'm also gonna continue and try and pull this up. You can go ahead.
Okay. Do you want to know how I got that with
Yes,
how I understood two planets? Okay.
yes.
First with Neptune. Neptune
Hmm.
isn't very comfortable in Aquarius since the two are a bit opposite, but the combination being in the fifth house is actually a good thing since it helps and, with structure and creativity.
Hmm.
Make sure you set aside time for hobbies and things you find pleasurable in life. Then
Yeah.
with Mars, on the other on Mars, on the other hand, is right at home in Aries. However, with that strong, masculine, outspoken, confident demeanor, it tends to put a strain on relationships. While we look for while we look for those qualities in others, it tends to cause friction and any type of partnership because the two head okay. Wow, I wrote that really funky.
That's okay.
Because they're both headstrong and hard to deal with each other.
Okay.
That's it for that one.
Okay. Love it. Absolutely spot on so far.
Okay. You said you had comments?
Um, Crap, I can't remember what they are now. I'm just glad I got the thing up on up on the screen now. Is everybody able to see the chart okay? Or do I need to zoom in a little bit more now that I can zoom in? Okay, everybody can see it. Okay. All right. So, um, I think as far as I'm trying to really hard to remember what was the comment that I did have because I know it was with the aspect between Aries and the fifth house. Can you read me that interpretation one more time? Sorry.
Sure. Uh, wait, which one? The
The one between, I
Aries
think
and the
it
fifth
was
house?
Neptune. Yeah. It was
Okay.
between, I think, Neptune and in the fifth house and I think it was Mars in the
Um,
seventh.
yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And which I think I have down it's a sextile. Is
Hmm.
that the right? Okay.
Yes.
Uh, well, the native may have a hard time with partnerships. They are aided when they are dealing with or doing things they both find enjoyable. Tensions are eased, and the native feels much more approachable when in their element, talking about or doing what they enjoy.
Hmm. Yes. I would add also, this is what I was going to say. So I would add that maybe romantic partners show up when that person is in their element most or doing something that's authentically them. Since Neptune, or when they're being like most creative, since Neptune, I actually really like Neptune in the fifth. It adds to that creativity. It's almost like Neptune in the fifth to me, even though it's in Aquarius, almost feels like Venus and Pisces. Because it is very creative, and so it's going to expand on like the uh, the almost like mystical and uh, maybe even otherworldly kind of hobbies that they might take on. Whether it is just something like painting or dance, it's going to be something a little quirky, a little different because it is in Aquarius, but it's something that is uniquely them. It's something that maybe that just brings them joy also, and maybe even something that they do on their own, but or like at a distance from other people. But I think somehow through that they might end up meeting people. So maybe they are somebody that does like digital art and they share their. This is just an example. Um, so maybe they create like digital art and they share it on forums and things like that. That I could see um, it, that being a way that they build community is through hobbies or something that brings them joy. Being creative is how they partner with other people, or there's always going to be that creative undertone when it comes to one-on-one relationships with other people. They bring in a lot of very futuristic thinking people that are wanting to pioneer things, or wanting to push something forward, or like just very idealistic people. Um, And I say that because because Aquarius is in the mix. Aries brings the pioneering side of that interpretation in the seventh, and so they want people that have like their own ideas. They also are going to be like their own people and individuals as well, maybe people that aren't trying to be followers. They really respect those people even more. They like rebels is what I think I'm trying to say the most in this actual sextile. It really screams, yeah, I'm a rebel and I like rebels as well. Um, it can also be like we could interpret it a lot of different other ways as well. But I think when they're in their element the most is when they find people that they can either be romantic with or just people that truly understand them. The only downside I see with this is maybe that Mercury is retrograde in Aries. We would count that as the seventh house as well. The only downside I would see with that is that everybody's so focused on what they are doing that communication could get lost in the sauce. And as far as relationships, possibly, if it's not initiated by one person or the other. Um, but yeah, I think they would probably bring on a lot of strong-willed people with that sextile. That's what I would think. And I'm really harping on romantic relationships most because the seventh house is about partners and like I guess if you want to go that route of who do you marry, that's the seventh house, but the fifth house is about like romance and um like pleasure, and it can be about risk too. Um, And so that's why I more so go, it's about romance, but it can also just be like creative partnerships or even partnerships that don't fit inside societal norms. So they could be like partnerships where the person is polyamorous or maybe they are in a relationship that, it's just open. Um, it's something that does not really fit in with how, like with the status quo is something that I would interpret from that um, as well. And so that I think that was like the gist of my comment on that. But I really enjoyed that interpretation. I think it's spot on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Want me to do the last one, the trine?
Yes.
Okay, so that is Pluto in the third house in Sagittarius to Mercury in the seventh in Aries.
Hmm.
It's easy for the native to communicate their ideas with others and share the personal truths that some may say is too much information out of nowhere.
Mm.
But the native prefers to go straight into a situation versus him hawing around it. And they do the same with their words. While some things may be hard to express with their partners due to the multitude of things on the native's mind, most intellectual things come easy.
I agree with that one. I have no comments. 100%. I feel like this person really loves this when they do talk about what's on their mind, they are spewing it out like just
They
um
actually do.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, because, yeah, like Pluto in the third in Sagittarius. Sagittarius already loves to talk, but you put Sagittarius in the third. So you're bringing Jupiter energy into the third. So it's like lots of communication. And so it's like, I want to share everything that I know. And Pluto can be, yes, about death and rebirth, but it also wants to pass things on for the next generation after whatever it has, you know, established has died off. So it wants to pass things on so it has new life. And so it's doing that even more so when you have that in Sagittarius in the third. So it's like I can't stop myself from talking about it. So I'm just gonna just gonna talk about it. So I'm like with that trying to Mercury, it's like, yeah, when it could also be like oversharing with other people. Um, but yeah, I agree. It's a very intense talking slash teaching that's happening for sure. Okay, let's see. I think we have some questions, but maybe not. Uh, gotcha. Uh, Alicia, so we are going to be restarting the course at some point. Since we haven't finished the course yet, I don't know when we're going to be restarting it, but that's how Honey is getting all of these interpretations, is that she's been here since the first class, and so we've kind of built up all the classes kind of compound on each other, and so that's how she's getting all this information. Is just from like the classes prior, and so uh, if you don't want to wait until we restart, I think Alex has all of I think she said she had all of the classes uploaded on YouTube, but we've also had a couple that were on Facebook Live. And so if you want to watch those and like just, you know, go along with also the with the handouts, whew, I'm having a hard time with making sure that I have like the words today. And if you want to follow along with the handouts, then you don't have to wait for the like for the class to start over. Either one. It just, I guess, depends on your learning style. But yeah, that's how everything is kind of being interpreted. Um, let's see. Okay, so let's 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 talk about, surprisingly, okay, so I'm gonna take this time to just kind of talk about something really quick. So you will have charts that just don't have a lot of aspects. I think I had one client once when I was doing a um when I was doing actual like business as an astrologer, where I struggled because usually my recorded chart readings were like 30 minutes. And this was, I think, my first chart where almost all of their planets were in Sagittarius. And now that I look back at it, I was like, that was like probably the worst chart reading one that I've ever done. Not because the information was wrong, but the combination of that person's chart in general and what that says about them, in just kind of like their general expectations that they probably had, which they did let me know their expectations, and the lack of aspects just did not mesh well. So I'm like, I think only like one or two planets was not in Sagittarius, but it was making no aspect to Sagittarius. So basically all of their like planets were in Sagittarius. So that's all I had to go on. I think Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all in Sagittarius. I think only like Pluto was somewhere else, and it wasn't making any aspect. And so in that kind of situation, you're just basically reading one sign and interpreting how all of those planets are interacting with each other um, within that sign. And in that situation, you would want to have a couple aces up your sleeve as far as, and this is why I say interpretation is such an art, because you would need to come up with different ways that certain planets would interact with that sign in that house. Um, so like for giggles, let's say that all of this person's this current charts, let's say that all of the planets in their chart were in Aries. Um,
His name's Shane, if that helps. So you
Shane,
don't have to
okay,
say this person.
guys, Shane. So let's say that all of Shane's planets were in their seventh house in Aries, right? So what we would need to do is you could go and interpret each planet on their own, and then you could tie in the conjunctions. but you need to have a really good understanding of Aries itself and how that could make interpretations between all the different planets. Because Saturn by itself is going to act very different in Aries than Mars in Aries is going to act. Mars in Aries is going to say, I probably am someone that is very direct about their ambitions, or when it comes, in this case, since it's the seventh house, it can be about like either a high sex drive or just being very ambitious when it comes to relationships that they have with other people, very upfront, possibly a little bit bossy. But Saturn in Aries might not be that way, because you could think of Saturn one as being an inhibitor of Aries, which would cause maybe the person to be a little shy or to have a lot of boundaries and a lot of walls up when it comes to partnerships with other people. Um, or to not maybe even have a good sense of self, which would put a damper on Mars a bit, because Mars is like, I know who I am. Mars in Aries says, I know who I am. I know what I want. But Saturn in Aries might say, well, I don't know who I am. So therefore, I don't know what I want. I want what my partner wants. That is a very different interpretation. But when you put the two, those are two very different interpretations. So if you put those two together, um, it gives you a bit of a clearer view of what might be happening. So in this case, since Mars and Saturn are together, are like right next to each other, and you have the sun on the other side, which is also somebody's own individuality and their energy and things like that. Saturn is kind of just sandwiched in between there. Saturn is touching both. And so it's saying that maybe there aren't a lot of very good boundaries with partners, whether that's actually coming from the partner not respecting Shane's boundaries, or Shane not respecting partner's boundaries and just kind of being a bulldozer. Somebody is being a bulldozer, whether it's the other person or Shane. Um, but it could also say that I am able, especially with Mercury retrograde in Aries, it says I let other people speak for me, uh, or I can become a bit more reserved when it comes to speaking about what I want, or what I need as well. Or it can says or it can say I really talk a bit too much about what it is I need, that I forget about the other person. You can play around with interpretations when it comes to clients, because remember I was saying how it needs to be a dialogue. This would come in handy in that case. And so, yeah, sorry. I'm like, I know that we have, uh, gotcha. Okay, Alicia, have a great night. Sorry, I didn't mean to have all the questions just kind of pile up. The Andrea, the lines inside the circle are going to be the aspects. So it's basically how the planets are interacting and talking with each other. And so different colors, so like we were talking about squares. So squares and oppositions are usually going to be like red because they're hard aspects. Easier aspects are usually going to be blue. This does vary depending on what website you're using or what software you're using. But usually hard aspects will be red. That's what I think a consistent that I've seen is that hard aspects are usually red. Um, let's see. Okay, I think
What
that's
do you mean by hard aspects and easy aspects?
so hard aspects are going to be like a square and an opposition. So they're ones that cause tension, or they cause things to break down a little bit. Easier aspects kind of bring things together. So like a square would be a aspect, it would be a hard aspect where it's not, it seems like the planets aren't working together to create anything. They have two very different opinions. So, like, for lack of a better term, on what needs to be done or what needs to be said or how we need to go about something. And so, in this case, like, Shane has Mars and Aries square Neptune in, oh, wait, no, 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 that's not. Uh, mm, let me find a square. Hold on. Because there is one. There we go. So between Venus in Pisces right here, and it's squaring Pluto in Sagittarius over here. Pluto in Sagittarius, it says that I want to talk a lot about what I learned, and I also want to be a student, but I also want to be a teacher. I'm very intense about learning those things. It can be, I won't lie, Pluto in Sagittarius can be a bit preachy, but Venus in Pisces says, I just want to have fun with everybody. I want everybody to get along, and I want to just be creative, and I want to daydream, all that stuff. Those are two very different energies. One is saying, I want to preach about the things that I am super passionate about. The other one's like, let's just have harmony with everybody. One does not care about being controversial. The other one is like, let's just float under the radar so that we can have a good time. And so you see how those two different placements are saying two very different things. And it's hard to have any kind of compromise on the two. Because what Venus and Pisces is trying to say is that let's just have a good time. While Pluto and Sagittarius is like, well, that's nice if we have a good time and we have some debauchery, but we're going to take it way over the top. And I'm going to talk about all the things that I've learned. It can be a little egotistical, is what I'm saying, where Venus in Pisces is not really valuing ego. It's more about like, I just want to have a good time. So I'm going to say anything maybe that would just keep conflict at a minimum, whereas Pluto and Sagittarius in the third is okay with starting a couple fights because it's thought provoking. Um, I was thinking there, I'm like, I had a little mind blip for a second. I had an ADHD moment for a second. There was a line in a song by Kanye and Jay-Z where it's like it's provocative. And they're like, what does that mean? That is what I think, like, if anybody's heard that song, that's what uh Pluto and Sagittarius in the third like says to me. It doesn't matter how wild what they said is it thought provoking? Venus and Pisces is just like, I want to have a good time, I want to feel good, I want to paint, I want to maybe kiss some people on the lips. That's what that's what it's saying. But it's two very different energies. And so you can't have a lot of compromise there. Um, because if you're controversial, not everybody's going to like you, but Venus and Pisces wants everybody to like you. Um, and so there's a lot of tension there. So that's what I mean by hard aspects is where there's not a lot of common ground between the two. Easy aspects have some sort of common ground. They're able to work with each other in somebody's chart. The two different placements support each other. So that would be like a sextile and a trine. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so let's move on to actually let me screenshot the next chart that I bring up so that we won't have to have the whole debacle about zooming in again. Give me 1 second. uh, mm, mm, mm. I feel like my only issue with AstroSeek is that it's not as easy to pull up celebrity charts only because it doesn't have it like right there on the home screen like Astro Theme does. What the heck? We'll just go on Astro Theme for a little bit and then we'll toggle between Astro Theme and AstroSeek. If you do not want to get any kind of like astrological software, if you do plan on doing this professionally, I do suggest AstroSeek since it has a larger selection of charts. You can also do astrocartography, um, which I'll be eventually teaching a series of classes on because it's not just going to be like it's astrocartography is not as simple as pulling up the chart and then having like all the lines. You need to actually do a whole different chart to understand where what the energy is doing in a certain place, and how that might work for you. Okay, so celebrity charts. Who's been in the news lately? I am trying to pick. I really should, I guess, stop doing celebrity charts because I don't really pay attention to celebrities that much. Um, let's do Kris Jenner since her birthday is tomorrow. Let's see. I already have her information. Okay, can everybody see this chart okay? Or do I need to make a snippet?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have, oh, we can do Simone Biles next. Okay, so let's see. We'll do Kris Jenner, and then we'll do Simone Biles if they have her chart information. That'll be an interesting one to look at. So Kris Jenner is a Virgo rising. We know that because AC is stands for ascendant. And then we have her moon is in Cancer. I think it's really interesting. Her moon's in Cancer I guess technically her moon's in Cancer in the 11th. However, this is gonna the astro theme only shows the chart in the Placidus house system, so it shifts the houses a little bit. So in this one, um, it's moon in Cancer in the 10th, which either way, it makes sense already. But then we have, of course, Sun in Scorpio. So with this one, let's take a look at what would her chart ruler be? Any guesses if she's a Virgo rising? Just as kind of like a review, um, the chart ruler would be the planet that the ascendant is ruled by. So if Virgo is ruled by Mercury, then what planet would be the chart ruler? And she's a Virgo rising. So her chart ruler would be Mercury, right? Because it's a Virgo rising chart. So all we're doing when we're asking what planet is actually ruling over the actual whole chart is saying, okay, their ascendant is ruled by this planet. So in this case, it would be she's a Virgo rising, and so Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So Mercury would be the chart ruler. Um, and so we have a question. Gotcha. Yeah, no worries. Um, and so Mercury would be the chart ruler of her chart, and Mercury is down here in Libra. Um, uh, sorry, I'm like again, I'm like, I do wonder, since her birthday is tomorrow, she's had, I wonder what's going to be going on with her financially since as well, not this year, but maybe going into next year, what money's going to be looking like for her. Um, since she has two planets in Libra, and we have the South Node in her second house right now in Libra. So what she owes and what is actually hers or her partner's um, things are going to be something interesting to watch. Um, So, okay, sorry, on a tangent there. Mercury in Libra can be somebody that's very good at like delegating or creating some sort of like partnerships with other people. It's very social, really good at like making new connections and just being someone that maybe is very easy to talk to. But they are someone that, um, with a lot of people with Mercury in Libra, since Libra is a Venus ruled sign, they can be very charismatic as well. And so we would attribute that to her in particular, since Mercury is the chart ruler and it's ruling over the chart in general. Because she's a Virgo rising, it can be she's somebody that's very particular, very well put together. And then we look into what Mercury is saying. It's somebody that's maybe very fashionable, somebody that really cares about what they say, what other people think of them. They care about how other people perceive them, and they might try to control that narrative through how they dress outwardly and the things that they have. Since Mercury is in Libra in the second house, in this chart, it's going to show that it's in the first, but if we're reading it whole sign, which I personally am, this the chart ruler would be in the second house in Libra. Um, let's see. See. Okay. Um, so then we have, let's look at, let's just go to like kind of like I guess like the next thing on this. And if you guys if it's your first class, don't worry about it. Like um just kind of listening to all of this, which might sound like a complete other language. I think it's maybe like the best way to learn how to read charts is actually just listening to people read charts. Because it starts to make sense eventually. Is what is that? Immersion is like how you learn another language anyway. I'd say the same thing applies when listening to astrology. Even if it does not make sense now, listen to enough charts being read, it'll start to make sense as well, as long as you're doing your own homework and things like that. Because there usually will be like some sort of explanations in there as
Did you
people are reading
go
charts.
around the circle on the outside where all the planets are as to what they are?
Sure. So the moon is going to be this guy right here. That looks like a crescent moon. This one right here that is like the glyph right here is Uranus. This glyph that's in red is Pluto. This one that looks like a 4 is Jupiter. Uh, EP isn't an actual like what do you call it? It's not an actual like planet. It's just saying that this is the angle. Um, I think it stands for ecliptic, if I'm not mistaken. But it's basically saying this is the horizon line. The AC we've already talked about is the ascendant. So it's just talking about where the first house starts or where the ascendant is. It depends on which actual housing system you're using, whether it be Placidus or whole sign. Placidus is going to basically shift the whole chart and say that you can have multiple signs in one house, whereas whole sign, it's going to be one sign per house. And so whichever way you decide to read charts is fine. Placidus is a little bit more complicated and messy since it does blend more than one sign sometimes into one house. Um, but I think that's also the beauty of it is that you can get so many different interpretations that way. But I would say that even though whole sign is, I guess, technically easier, you still get a great amount of accurate information from both. And so that is the ascendant is just saying that this is where the first house starts. Mars is going to be this one right here with the little arrow. The one that kind of looks like Venus with the little horns on it's going to be Mercury. The glyph or the symbol that looks like the trident is going to be Neptune. And then we're going to have the sun. That's going to be this one right here that is going to have like the little dot in the middle. And then hold on. Hey, can you guys mute everybody mute their microphones? Thank you. Okay, so and then this one that looks like an H is going to be Saturn. We haven't gone over asteroids yet, but since this one is also here, this little moon that has a cross underneath it is Lilith. I'll be honest, I do not use Lilith often in my own practice. However, there are astrologers that absolutely adore Lilith and use her all the time. I am not one of those astrologers, so like my understanding of Lilith is very surface level. I will say that. I know what it means, and I know how to interpret it, but as far as like really getting into, I guess, deeper interpretations of Lilith, I would say I'm probably not the astrologer for that, only because I don't use her in my own practice. But Venus is going to be this glyph that's right next to Lilith. That's actually a really interesting one. Having Lilith and Venus like together like that is, I feel like, so on brand for Kris Jenner. This little horseshoe looking thing right here is going to be the North Node. And this little circle with the X is called it's the part of fortune, but I forget what this little cross is. I had to look that up, what the little cross means. But this one down here, the little circle with the X, is the part of fortune. That is the part of fortune and the North Node are not actual planets. They are just the part of fortune is an angle in the chart, or or not an angle, it's a trigger point in the chart. It makes things happen, whatever that might be. I also heard another fellow astrologer say that it's usually like a particular day, like when the moon crosses over your part of fortune, that's usually a day that is like the best day ever. I'm still testing that theory. um, but apparently that can also be how it's interpreted. I could see how that could be interpreted. That's not how I learned it, but I also love like, just, you know, hearing how other astrologers interpret different parts of the chart. And, why not? You know, opening up the observation to what they're saying. But I thought that was a really different interpretation of the part of fortune that had not heard. So I'm still testing out that theory. So far, it has been true. Um, every time I have had the moon cross over my own part of fortune, I have had a good day. So maybe. And then I left out the MC is also not a actual planet. MC stands for midheaven. It's where, just like the AC is the ascendant and it's an angle in the chart, and it's saying basically this is where the first house starts. MC is saying this is where the 10th house starts. And it's the highest point in the chart, which is where we get midheaven. It's basically like it's the highest point in the chart. So if you have any planets around the midheaven, they usually contribute to your public persona, your reputation. It can also be like how people see you in whether you're outer, like the public image that you have, or it can be your relationship with authority figures, or it can even be like what's happening at work can also be having to do with your midheaven. So like if you had Venus on your midheaven, I see that one actually quite a lot. Venus on midheaven, amazing placement to have. It says that you are probably perceived very well at work. You have bosses that are, mm, for the most part, fair, at least to you. um, or you have a good relationship with your boss. If not, with if that doesn't apply to your boss, it says that a lot of people just genuinely think you're great. Um, or they like that perception of you, what you show out in the public. Who you actually are is beside the point. People like what you put out publicly. Would be like a very Venus conjunct midheaven thing. Um, there's one that's not shown on here as well. IC, which is going to be this bold arrow down here, is where the fourth house starts. And so if you're doing um, any kind of reading and you see that the chart brings up this, and it has like a little IC indicator down here, it just means, I think it means imum coli, which I forget how to pronounce it, but it doesn't matter. But it means that basically that's where the fourth house starts. And that's your private life. That's where you have all the childhood stuff. That's where you live. Um, Again, like going on to like a little bit of a tangent when we're talking about like astrocartography, if you see a planet or an aspect when you're doing astrocartography and it says like your moon line is like lining up with your IC or whatever in a certain place, it says that this is probably a place that you'll um, really enjoy, where you will feel at home at. It could be somewhere maybe that I guess if you look at it this way, it'd be somewhere that you maybe lived in a past life also, and that could be why it feels like home. Um, I've seen a couple astrologers interpret it that way as well. But basically, yeah, that's just where it's where the fourth house begins is the IC, and then across from the AC is going to be the DC. And that's the descendant instead of the ascendant. So the ascendant is all about you, where the descendant is all about the partners that you have, whether it be romantic, business, friendships. It's all the one-on-one partnerships. That's not shown on here either, but on other websites they do put it on there. So I'm just letting you know in case you ever encounter it.
I just had a quick question.
Sure.
When you have, like, if you're looking at AC, it says 43 and it's a sign of some sort, and then 28 degrees.
Mhm.
So the 28 degrees is basically where it is in that house from where it starts, and it's at 28 degrees. That's where it's located. But what is the 43 foot or something?
I want to say I always get so confused on it. I think it's either the minutes or the hours. It's one of those. But it's basically counting down to when it's going to move to the next degree. Or I always forget whether that number in particular is
Mhm.
hours or minutes. I want to
Mhm.
say it's hours because whoops, because like I've looked at like Saturn and that number won't move for days sometimes. And so I want to say it's hours. um or I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, sometimes like that, or no, that's the degree. My bad. The degree won't move, but that actual number will move very slowly sometimes. So again, I don't want to say that it's minutes. I want to say it's hours. Um, but that's also something I would have to double check. I'm not 100% confident on that, but I know it's either minutes or hours. It's one of those.
Yeah, going back to my own chart and learning how to read my own chart, it does sound like it's hours.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it might be hours. Gonna make a consensus on that one. Is that it's hours? But yeah, so that's what that one is.
I have a question. Does that
Sure.
matter when you're reading the chart?
No. I mean, I guess okay. So I enjoy a bit of uh degree theory up to a point, because I think at some point things get a bit too complicated, and I don't like to overcomplicate things in just kind of in my own life in general. And so I'll usually just look at the degree on its own. And there are lots of degree theory on its own goes down its own like rabbit hole. So I can't tell you for sure if hours play a big part. I'm sure they do if you go far enough down the rabbit hole in degree theory. But the way that I've read degree theory and at least heard it from astrologers that do use degree theory or at least some sort of degree theory, they've never mentioned that that changes things as far as I know. And whenever I've looked into like books that talk about some sort of degree theory, like the Sapien Symbols book that I have that we'll talk about when we get on like different resources that you can look into, um, ours is never mentioned. Only the degree is mentioned. So far, nothing that I've seen personally. I mean, and I'm not saying that it's not out there. Um, Nothing that I've seen personally mentions that ours uh like um plays a big part, except when you're talking about decans. Um, because I did have this question once. So as like a little review, we talked about decans briefly, I think in like at towards the beginning of the class, where you can basically break up one sign into three sections by degree. What differentiates, so like say like so I'll use myself as an example because I had questions about this for years. So like for Pisces, the way that decans go is that for degrees, the first 10 degrees of a sign are going to be ruled by one planet, then the second 10 degrees are ruled by another planet, and then like the third group of 10 degrees is ruled by a completely different planet. But my question for the longest was like, okay, but I was born on the day where the sun was at 20 degrees of Pisces, which is a problem because 20 degrees, depending on what kind of degree theory you're talking about, like, or how you're interpreting it, because a different one will also say for decans that you only count by 9 degrees. That I'm like, so what planet am I ruled by? So that is the only time that I've seen the hours come into place, um, is when you're talking about decans, because it's not like at an exact degree. So like if this number said, let's say that this was like at 20 degrees of Virgo, and this was like at 00, then that decan or that degree would be ruled by a completely different planet than 20 degrees and like 43 hours. It would change it since that's that small shift by some hours. That's the only time that I've seen the hours play a part. And so I imagine since it plays a part in that small case, that it would play a part in other places as well. I just don't know them personally. But that's the only example I've seen where it does make a difference. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no
Oh,
problem.
also, may I ask one more thing that's a little unrelated?
Yeah, we love tangents here. If you
You said that like squares, so people who have a lot of squaring planets, in their charts tend to not get along as well, right?
I am so split on that question because I'm like, I think again, it depends on the people. Cause, okay, so we're going down such a rabbit hole here. Okay, so here's my thing. I agree. I subscribe to the idea that the more like oppositions and squares you have, actually like the more potential and better a relation, like especially a romantic relationship can be, because you have so much you can learn from the other person. But if you're someone that maybe isn't interested, and learning how to do things in a different way, um, then that plays a part. But there's the potential there for a very long standing because you're always having to work through something with someone, and finding out these new ways of working with another person. Um, but if you always have easy aspects with someone and you have all these easy aspects to me and to, I think, a couple different astrologers that I've talked to, I'm like, that screams like friendship. Because with your friends, you're, for the most part, everything's copacetic for the most part. Um, but in romantic relationships, it's not always like that. So not just myself, but a lot of astrologers will say that you need a little friction in romantic relationships, for things to be like long standing. It doesn't say that you're more compatible, but like as, if we're talking about, I know you asked about like compatibility, but and that's why I was like, we're going down a whole different rabbit hole here. But I personally think that if you have a little bit of spice in there with those hard aspects, it actually makes the relationship a bit stronger because there's so much to learn. But if everything's easy, then it's like you're, you know, it's things can get lazy very quickly. You get comfortable very quickly, and there's never anything to learn, because everything is so harmonious. Um, I mean, I guess I could see like where someone would disagree on that for sure. Who wouldn't want an easy relationship? But I just think for like reality's sake, that harder aspects, having like at least a couple hard aspects is good for a romantic relationship. Um, because you do have things that you can learn from the other person. It just really depends on the people and if they want to learn or get out of their comfort zone or do things differently than they've been doing them for however long. But yeah, did that answer your question?
Actually, that wasn't my question. That was just a
Oh,
preamble
my
to the
bad.
question.
Oh
You're
yeah, well, I'm
good.
like, sure was. Sorry, repeat your question.
You're good.
Sorry.
I was just curious. I have a friend, and I'm just looking at it, and his chart signs is the complete opposite of mine.
Hmm.
Like my Scorpio is in third, and Taurus is in ninth.
Hmm.
His Taurus is in third, and his Scorpio is in ninth.
Uh-huh.
So just like with the complete opposite signs like that, does that mean we're like compatible or incompatible, just in a general, not
I feel
necessarily
like that's
relationship, just any
fantastic.
stance?
I feel like that's actually really good, whether you're friends or like business partners or whatever, because you're always going to have, again, I think it really depends on the two people. Because oppositions, like I said, I'm like, usually they're doing the same thing. They're just doing them in different ways. And so there's a lot of common ground to be explored there and a lot to learn from each other. But I think it's compatible because it's kind of like you're looking at yourself in a mirror, slightly warped mirror, but it's look like if everything's opposite, then it's like you're almost looking at that mirror upside down. And so it's just almost like the same person, but like it's like I don't want to say like an evil twin kind of situation, but like a little like twins essentially. But you just do things a bit different, but you're working towards the same goal, maybe for different reasons. But I think it's compatible in a situation like that.
Okay, great, thank you. That's what I was thinking too, that it'd be kind of like opposite, but I've always had good time with opposites. So
Yeah, yeah. I think
thank
where it
you.
gets sticky is like the squares, because squares, I'm like, there is a lot of like, I mean, if even if we think of like the energy of actual like oppositions, it's Saturn, and Saturn isn't necessarily for all the drama and like the all the things. It just is more stoic, and it's like, well, this is what I think, and I'm going to be very like objective almost about it. And if you don't like it, then I'm not about to scream about it. I'm going to be an adult about it. But Mars, which is what the energy of a square is going to be like, well, I'm going to scream about this. And I'm going to let you know, maybe very aggressively, that I don't like this. And so it's a bit more dramatic and explosive with squares. So I think oppositions can have maybe the advantage of agreeing to disagree at the very least.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And we are
Yeah.
pretty similar, actually. It's a little scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Let's see. Okay. Uh, okay. Mm, okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So yes, we were talking about Kris Jenner. So, okay, so we went over the glyphs. Um, did we have another question about Kris Jenner? I don't, before I keep going on her chart. No? Okay. So, since we are here, and I do want to talk about this, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to segue into um asteroids a little bit. So we'll start by talking about Lilith. Okay. So Lilith is, I'm going to tie in the mythology and then just kind of how I've used them in my own practice. It'll be very minimal with Lilith, obviously, since I don't use her a lot. But Lilith is going to be, as far as like mythology, it is said that she was the first wife of Adam, or I think um, some say that she was the first witch. Uh, Pop culture says she's the mother of all demons, but the the main consistent like the main kind of thing that I've gotten across all of those is that Lilith is a badass. So um the thing with Lilith is that she's dark, the dark feminine. Whatever, there are some ties to trauma when it comes to Lilith in astrology, but it's taking that trauma or fear and using it in like almost using it against other people or using it in a way to empower oneself, ideally. And it's usually about sexual power. And so it's like I don't know why I'm like, even though I know that I don't think this actually happened in history, I always think about like the burning of the bras. I don't think that actually happened in history, but um, I could be wrong. But I want to say in some history class they said that that didn't actually happen. But anyway, that's a tangent. But I always think about that when I'm thinking about Lilith. Is like it's almost like this very rebellious, uh, kind of, yeah, like just badassery that's happening, but it's more linked to women and sexuality and being empowered more so by that. Something that other people say no to, you say yes to, and you do it in a way that really just like pushes it in their face. Um, and an underlier of all of that can be pain and trauma. But taking that pain and trauma and doing something productive, ideally with it. It can be destructive as well, since Lilith does carry some energy from Mars as well. Um, it's about some sort of like aggression, fighting, um, which can be used positively or negatively. Um, Lilith can also be in someone's chart. It can also be like the mistress, which I find very interesting in Kris Jenner's chart in particular, especially if you have any kind of aspects between Lilith and Juno in a person's chart. I always think that that's really interesting. Um, Transit wise, like transits are like um, when like it's like real time what's happening the in the cosmos like right now. Um, I forget when this was in particular, but there was a time where, so basically, when Juno and um, Lilith, when they oppose each other, that's the time usually when we'll see a lot of cheating allegations come out, or like the mistress is like an affair is like exposed, or you'll see because Juno is the wife and Lilith would be the mistress, I guess, in collective worldview. Um, and so you'll see like lots of cheating scandals kind of coming out and things like that. Um, and so it can kind of get a little messy. But I don't know. Personally, I love that. I love when Juno and Lilith are opposing each other. It always makes for a good story time. So let's go. I'm gonna pull up the asteroids, but I know that was like a really abbreviated thing with Lilith. Um, I apologize that I can't give uh, a more in-depth description of her, but that's yeah. What you want to remember is rebellion, empowerment, sexual energy, dark sexual energy, with a little bit of trauma there, is what you want to remember. Let me bring up the. Can we make sure we're all muted? Um, where did my Gmail go? Okay, so
If you're talking to us, we can't hear you.
my bad. Sorry, guys. Thank you. Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So I'll repeat what I said. So Juno is going to be the good wife in mythology and in astrology. That's mostly what she stands for in astrology, is being the wife that stands by her partner through all the things, with a little bit of resentment um, on the back burner there. So in Greek mythology, Juno would be Hera. And then, of course, in Roman mythology, she would be uh, Juno. And she's the goddess of marriage in mythology as well. We do see, like in mythology, her also be attributed to what is that? Childbirth, or I think at some point. Um, but in at least in astrology, she's mostly attributed to just being the wife. Um, this is more so going to be coming from mythology also because Juno made like the children that she did have with Zeus, her partner. I think she only had, didn't she? I think she only had Mars with with Zeus, but most of her children she made her by herself. So it's not more so about being the mother as it is just being the partner, at least in at least in astrology. Um, and so when we're talking about Juno, this is going to be the glyph for Juno is this little star with the cross underneath it. Um, we're taking from a little bit from Libra and a little bit from Scorpio. So the partnership is coming from the partnership aspect of Juno is coming from Libra, but also we're getting like the deeper, more vulnerable parts of Juno are coming from Scorpio. And I'm saying that Libra is representing the marriage. Can we make sure that we're all muted? Sorry. Um, we are getting all of uh the marriage aspects because literally Libra is more attributed to marriage. Um, and just kind of like the superficial side of partnership and the actual contract that you sign when you get married is going to be Libra. But Scorpio is going to be like the actual intimacy. And some would even argue that Scorpio can represent the actual marriage that's happening, not just in private, but how you are vulnerable with your person, how you melt into each other, whether it be physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever. Also, what we're seeing is not just with the vulnerability aspect that really makes a marriage and what's going on in private with Scorpio, but we're also seeing like some of the revenge aspects of Scorpio come in when we're looking at Juno because Libra is like, what do I need to commit to this person? What do I need to sign on the dotted line when we're talking about Juno? But Scorpio is going to add to Juno because it's like, okay, if I don't get those things that I need to settle down with someone, but I'm still in a relationship with them, how do I lash out? That's coming from the Scorpio aspect of Juno. So therefore Juno becomes about what do I need to commit, but also if I don't get those needs met, or if those needs aren't being met at all, how do I lash out? Usually passive aggressively. So um let's see. Um so I thought I had a list on here. I do not, I don't know where it went. I am so upset. I don't know what happened to that list. We'll circle back around to Juno because I do have a whole list of like some of the things that she represents, just like I do for the rest of them. I just don't see that on this actual document. But for Juno as well, because Juno is one of my favorites, so I'm a little disappointed that the list isn't there. um, Juno is probably one of my favorite aspects to work with, just because it does add a little bit of extra context when you're talking about compatibility between two people. You want to make sure that the Juno placements match up because it's talking about needs in particular. Um, so if we, I can't give you like a comprehensive list of Juno again because I'm like, it's not there. But some of the things that Juno does represent would be one, marriage, but can also be like abuse in marriage or like battered women. Um, and we can only imagine where that's coming from Juno's own story in mythology. But she also represents um, women that are single mothers, even though we were talking about how she's not actually attributed a lot to motherhood. This would be single mothers, would be coming from Juno, and I do believe also from Ceres as well, which we'll talk about next. Um, these with Juno, it can also be uh, like what's the word? I just had such a brain fart and it was on the tip of my tongue. Jesus Christ. I'll get the list. Uh yeah, because I'm having the biggest brain fart. That's why I wrote all of this down. So I would so I wouldn't, my bad. Sorry guys. Um so we'll move on to series and we'll circle back to Juno once I have all the lists all together. I don't think any of the rest of them have disappeared like that. Uh mm, no, looks like everything else is here. All right. Okay. So if we move on to series, actually, did we talk about series the last time? Because I think I remember going into the story of series. I think we did talk about series. If anybody could confirm or deny, but
I
if
don't
not, hmm,
I don't remember it.
okay, we'll just review it. Or talk about it. I can't remember if we actually did talk about series. So series is going to be the mother figure or how we nurture, where Juno is what we need to commit and how we lash out. Series is how do we nurture other people. um, or it can also be about how we might feel abandoned as well. So it's coming from much of the astrology is coming from the mythology of Ceres, which would be Demeter in Greek mythology. And so a lot of what we interpret Ceres as in astrology is coming from the story about Persephone in the relationship between Demeter and Persephone and how all that went down with Hades. And so, surprise, surprise, a lot of what we're also talking about is the archetypes of Taurus, Scorpio, Virgo, and Cancer. Taurus, it's about food, it's about agriculture. Scorpio, it's literally the underworld, but it's also about what do we gain from other people's resources or what resources do we have from other people. Um, it's about death and rebirth as well. Virgo is the caretaker, but Virgo also has ties to agriculture as well. Cancer is literally the mother and how do we nurture ourselves, but also other people. Um, and so we have this whole list here, kind of like breaking down some of the things as well. But if you need the list, you can also look through this. But that's the gist of all the things that we're talking about when we're talking about series. Some of the astrological concepts and correspondences when we're talking about series are going to be the mother figure. So we can talk about nursing, like nursing, not just as like, nursing a child and like, milk and things like that, but nursing as a career is a very series like thing because you're literally caring for another person. Pregnancy, miscarriage, and abortion. We were talking about Scorpio, how it plays a part in series as well. So we were talking about abandonment, but we were also talking about um, some sort of death um, when it comes to being a nurturer or a mother of some sort, because series cannot also not just talk about how you nurture other people, but it can talk about how your mother nurtured you, and therefore how you nurture other people, um, whether it be the same or completely different. Um, but it does speak to that. Series also comes into play when we're talking about abortion as well. So we're talking about maybe some sort of loss with either of those, miscarriage or abortion, either one. Menstruation and menopause um, are also going to come up when we're talking about series. Parental relationships. So we talked about this a little bit, how it's how your mother or your major caretaker, if not the mother, nurtured you as a child. So it can be like single parenthood, nannies even fall under series. Um, Step, foster, and adoptive parents fall under series because they're all caretakers, as well as grandparents. Anyone who is taking care of you, very much a series archetype. Um, when you see series in a chart, like I've seen like series in the first would be someone that probably is very much a caretaker. It does not matter what sign it's in because the sign is just going to say how that person nurtures. But if it's like if you have like Ceres in the first house, that person is probably going to be like the the figure of their house, or of their friend group or house or just kind of environment in general. They like to nurture things. They like to maybe also might be the friend that is very much into like cooking for other people. They might be the person that's, inviting people over for the holidays. They are going to be the nurturer, almost like the little monarch of the whatever group they're in. um, Childcare. So like prenatal care, birthing classes, daycare, preschools, elementary schools, child abuse also falls up under series. Um, Women's rights and mothers' rights, as well as midwives, midwifery, nursing, and hospice. So all the nurturing. We talked about agriculture a little bit when we first introduced series. So like having a green thumb. Again, someone with a series in the first house could have like a green thumb, or I could even see this also with like the series in the second could also have a green thumb, since the second house is about resources. Or it can be about like really paying a lot of attention to your finances, really nurturing your finances, or maybe farming is how you gain money. It would depend on like the sign that it's in, but I could see series in the second house being a lot about agriculture being how you gain money. Seeds, harvests, and seasons, as well as plants, gardening, farming, veterinarians, and animal care all fall under series as well. Um, Again, all of this is like some sort of nurturing of something, mothering something. um, One of the ones that I think is also really interesting, that is not so much about nurturing, in some way, I guess. I guess if you reached a little bit, this could be, is about is about work and labor. Um, Unemployment in unions. Unions, I guess you could say it nurtures somebody, but it's more a bit, I think it's a bit broader. Um, so like also strikes, really digging into what do you deserve, what is owed to you, and that's all coming from that Scorpio aspect of series as well. What are the resources of other people that you are either inheriting or gaining from other people? Workers and employees are also a part of series, as well as disability. Not just like, we're not, I guess I can rephrase, really, we should rephrase that. Disability compensation is going to be something that would fall under series as well. Or caring for others that have disabilities. Since we were talking a little bit about hospice earlier, it would kind of apply there as well. Um, so that is series. Any questions on series before we move on to Palace Athene? Does anybody want to share their series placement in their chart? If you can find her, because I think she only shows up on a couple websites, unless you actually look her up. I think Astro Theme will show you, but you have to like select it, I think. Uh,
I don't have a question about series, but is there a place to get this docs so we could have it for
yeah. So I'll resend it to Alex once I edit the list on Juno. Because I think Alex might have, I know, like I switched computers recently, so I think the updated list that I had is on the other computer. So I might need to resend this to Alex. But either way, I'll send it to her this weekend. I can't promise it will be tonight, but it'll probably be tomorrow, most likely. Um, but yes, I'll send it to Alex so that she can post it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so we're gonna go over one more. We're gonna go over Palace, and then we'll finish up for today. And then all we'll have left is gonna be Vesta and Chiron. Yep, for next time. So Palace is going to be basically how you innovate. It's or how you create or fight, but it's more intellectual. It's like intellectual creativity is what I can say is mostly what Palace is about. There is a bit of an innovation kind of slant to that. Um, let's see. So Palace, we're taking three archetypes. We're taking Libra, Leo, and Aquarius. Libra kind of gives the um, when we were talking about Libra way back some months ago, we were talking about how Libra is not just like this sign that's super Venus-like. It's also it's very strategic. Um,
It might be 8 o'clock. The class starts.
hey, Michelle, can you mute yourself?
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Um, and so we have Libra being kind of like that more strategic aspect of things, and Pallas is going to be, in at least in mythology, she was the more level-headed, strategic version of Mars, um, counterpart of Mars. But we also see Pallas in astrology talking about relationships because in at least in astrology, or not in astrology, Jesus, in mythology, um, we see her as almost becoming one of the guys. We see this coming from the Aquarius aspect of her too, because she's a bit androgynous. But that's where we also see it come in, like with partnerships, is almost like being a woman, but the relationship between genders is a bit, I don't want to say blurred, but it's a bit for the person, it's a bit conflicted when, especially like if Palace is not well situated. Um, don't worry about it, Michelle. It's okay. Um, let's see. So yeah, we have uh, then we have Leo, which is the creativity aspect of Palace. Aquarius is bringing in the innovation. It's saying, okay, we're not just being creative, but how can we use this um, to create something new, to learn something new, to debate something new, um, change something. With Leo in particular, or sorry, not with Leo in particular, with the Aquarius aspect of Pallas in particular, we're also going to have uh sorry, I lost my train of thought. Um, this is going to sound so, I'm really showing my ADHD here because this is such a tangent. So whenever I think about Palace, I think about 3D printers and how they make 3D printers that can actually make full-blown houses. That's how I think about Palace, Athene. Like, I don't know if that's like a good like thought to everybody else to really drive home the innovation, the innovative creativity of things, but it's efficient. It's creative, but it's for a reason. It's not being creative just for creative sake. It's creative to actually give something or build something new, um, to push something forward is what I'm trying to say. And so I always think about like those 3D printers that make full-blown houses for people to live in, but that's something that we didn't have decades before. Um, but somebody had to come up with that, and you need both creativity and like engineer's mind to have those two things come together and become a thing, um, for something useful. So I don't know if that makes sense to everybody else, but that is also what I'm just kind of trying to drive home. We also get a couple things from Libra as well. Um, and we get justice, or like the justice system, weighing options. We get partners, art appreciation, and feminism. I will say with Palace, we were talking about this is what I was going to say. So with feminism, and, with Palace, Palace is not all about feminism. So here's the thing with Palace, because Palace Athene or Athena in astrology was in quite a few different stories, was either portrayed as a woman that, or a goddess that wasn't always a girl's girl. That's kind of the same thing that we take from uh, her in astrology. It can be somebody that really struggles with, if we're talking about like a woman's chart, maybe somebody that really struggles with the social norms of being a woman or being able to relate to women in general. And that's if it's like a man or a woman, but in particularly in women in Palette, of wherever Palace is situated, it can tell you where maybe she does like that woman does not play by the regular societal rules of being a woman, or where she might cause a little controversy um, with her fellow women as well, because of the androgyny that kind of comes up between the archetypes of Aquarius and Libra. So we also have some correspondences that can come up. So like social justice, very much like an Aquarius thing. Intellect, learning disabilities, it's about being a bit different, um, being a bit of an outlier as well. Um, Hand-eye coordination, precision. Again, um, Athena was the more level-headed version of Mars in mythology, and so that's where we're getting some of the more physical aspects of the things that she represents. Problem solving, activism, courage and strength, visual arts, weaving, of course, knitting and pottery. Um, sexual identity and balance, or that a lack of. So we have like sexual alienation, father daughter dynamics. I always think that this one is really interesting. So if you have someone that has like a very strong palace placement, it could say it could really hint more to um someone that's more of like someone that's closer to their father, even especially if they're a woman, or someone that just does not relate well to their mother. It usually is not vice versa. It's usually not somebody that is super close to the mother. If Palace is just very strong in their chart, it's usually somebody that relates more to the father figure if they are a woman. I guess genetically speaking. But over identification with men or being one of the guys is also, of course, a Pallas Athene asteroid thing in astrology, but also being healers, therapists, physical therapy, hypnosis, martial arts, and kung fu, as well as tai chi. All the fun things. I really enjoy Pallas in astrology. I don't think not as much as Juno, but I think she's very interesting. Justice in politics, law and legal matters, being a mediator, rooting for the underdog or the minority, as well as diplomacy, are all going to be things that are attributed to Pallas Athene. And that is our class today. There's going to be no homework today, since we still haven't gotten through all the asteroids and we haven't even gotten to how to interpret them like in real time in charts or in transit. So there's no homework today, and we did review mostly today. Um, and so does anybody have any questions before we sign off? Of course, no problem. Okay. Well, I will see you guys. So I will see you guys again. I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Since we missed last month, I will see you guys on the 18th. So not next Saturday, but the Saturday after that one. I will see you guys again. And so we don't even have to wait a month this time. We just will see each other in 2 weeks on November 18th. So yeah, I will see you guys then. I'll see you guys later. Have a great week. How do I stop the recording?